It's time now for our weekly Healthy Living Matters segment, brought to you by our friends at Community Medical Centers. And each week we talk about the various subjects when it comes to stroke awareness, to educate and inform, and also arm ourselves with preventative measures. So if someone we love has a stroke, we can help them out. So this week our guest is Dr. Vishwas, or Dr. Wish, as I think is a very charming name for a doctor. So we're here to talk about stroke. First, let's start off with, what are the stroke warning signs?
Well, the stroke warning signs can be anything, but most commonly a person can start feeling weakness of the face, which they typically feel like droopiness on one side of the face.
Right.
And face becomes asymmetrical, meaning it is not symmetrical.
Right.
And then they will have sudden onset of speech problems, like a person can have like a slurred speech, or they may have a speech problem like in where they want to tell something, but they're not getting proper words out.
Right,
And
right.
they typically call it as word finding difficulties. And sometimes, most commonly, a person can have like a weakness in the arm or the leg, or loss of sensation in the arms or legs. And it is very important to identify them quickly.
Right.
Also, very rarely, sometimes people can have like double vision or like loss of vision in one half of the field, or some of the most common warning signs for the stroke. But mainly, the stroke symptoms depend on which part of the brain is affected.
Right, and so a really important thing to remember, and I think we sort of, for people who are not in the medical field, it's hard to understand, but this is something that's happening in your brain. So your cognitive function is really going to be the thing that tells you you're having a stroke. And it's not like if you break a bone, it really hurts. You know, these are things that you have to know that this could be a symptom of stroke to take the appropriate action. But before that happens, you know, before we ever see somebody we love have stroke symptoms, or before we experience those, who should know that they might be at risk? So who is at risk of stroke?
There can be several risk factors for this stroke, but most common and most significant risk factor is the diabetes.
Okay.
People who have diabetes are at very high risk of stroke, and people who have high blood pressure, meaning their blood pressure is consistently higher than 140 or 90, damages the blood vessels, and with the blood vessels supplying the brain, and that can lead to the stroke. And people who have high cholesterol are at high risk of having stroke, and age is one of the risk factor for the stroke, which typically see in elderly population.
So we can't do anything about our age.
Yes.
But if we are in that high risk category, we have diabetes, we have high blood pressure, what can we do to maybe minimize our risk of having stroke?
Oh, absolutely. That's a very important question. And you know, there are a lot of things that a person can do to minimize the risk of these strokes. One is living healthy, right? Eating healthy, like eating more vegetables and fruits and regular exercise, lose that excess weight, because obesity is one of the highest risk factor for the stroke.
Right.
So losing that excess weight is also an important factor that a person can do with regular exercise. And smoking tobacco is the highest risk factor. So quitting tobacco smoking and then doing illegal drugs, to mention methamphetamine. And we are seeing a lot of patients coming with stroke with use of methamphetamine and other drugs. So definitely staying away from those where that is the risk. And taking the medications that the doctor prescribes for the high blood pressure and blood glucose, and making sure they take it on time and regularly without missing any doses. Controlling their blood glucose and blood pressure is very prime importance.
So living a healthy lifestyle, I mean, that can take care of a whole host of things, but definitely that will help you have a healthy brain. If we do, because sometimes this is in our genetics, or we're older, if we do see that somebody is having signs of stroke, or we ourselves realize that we might be having signs of stroke, why is it so important to get care quickly?
Yeah. So I would like to share some statistics because time is essence in stroke. You know, when a stroke happens, a part of the blood flow to that part of the brain is blocked, and that part of the brain dies. Do you know that for every second, there are 32,000 brain cells that die?
That's a lot of brain cells.
And 1 minute, it is 1.9 million. of brain cells that die.
That's a lot of brain
it
cells.
is, yeah, so every minute or even every seconds or every minute that delay, there are so many brain cells at risk, and when those brain cells die, people lose function.
Right.
So that's why we always emphasize on like coming to the care, take the care quickly, and when they come to the hospital and if they had stroke within 3 or 4.5 hours, we have the opportunity to administer a medicine called thrombolytic medicine.
Yeah.
And this medicine can reverse the stroke in some cases, or it can minimize the stroke because it dissolves that clot.
Yes. And so if you see a loved one having the signs of stroke, they have a droopy face, they have weakness in the arms,
Yes.
their vision is impaired, their speech is impaired.
Absolutely.
It's very important to get there quickly because you would much rather err on the side of caution
Yes.
than think, oh, I don't know, maybe they're just dehydrated.
Yeah.
So Community Medical Centers has tons of information on their medical care and their stroke team that they have there, and that is all available online. So Dr. Wish, thank you so much. These are great segments, especially to get this in people's minds so that when we see symptoms, we know what they are and we can act quickly. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
And this next business is helping families and community be prepared for any occasion with high quality and great tasting products you can enjoy anytime, anywhere. We have more after this.